Captain Nathan Hayes had always considered himself a man of action. A decorated pilot in the United Earth Forces, he had faced many challenges on the front lines. Yet stranded on a foreign planet with nothing but a damaged ship and a vast, unfamiliar world before him, Nathan found himself in an unexpected situation. The last thing Nathan remembered was the sudden shockwave that crippled his ship. One moment he was deep in space, executing a precision strike against an alien warship. The next, he was tumbling through space, his controls malfunctioning and the world outside turning chaotic. The crash landing on the surface of this strange planet was an unwelcome surprise. His ship was beyond repair, and though he had managed to eject safely, his fate now depended on a place he could not understand. The air here was thick with a strange, metallic scent, and the sky above was streaked with colors Nathan had never seen before. The planet was not like Earth or any of the colonies he had visited in his career. It felt ancient, with colossal stone structures and distant, towering mountains. There were no familiar signs of life, just an eerie silence that filled the air. He had no choice but to begin walking. For days, he searched for signs of civilization, but there was nothing. It was as if the planet had been abandoned by time itself. Then, on the fourth day, just as he was beginning to lose hope, he came across something remarkable, a large, weathered temple at the edge of a vast valley. The structure stood tall against the sky, its walls decorated with strange symbols and carvings that looked as if they told stories from a time long past. Nathan was tired, thirsty, and hungry, but he had to investigate. There was something about the temple that called to him. Perhaps it was a sign of life. His curiosity led him to enter the temple's shadowy depths, where the air felt cooler and filled with the scent of incense. The walls were adorned with glowing crystals, their light pulsing rhythmically, almost as though they were alive. He wasn't sure whether to feel awe or fear, but the place was undeniably beautiful. Nathan crept further in, his boots echoing on the stone floor. That's when he saw her. At first, he thought she was a statue. She stood motionless, her back to him, draped in a flowing robe of silver and violet fabric. Her skin shimmered with a faint, ethereal glow, and her long, dark hair cascaded down her back. There was a stillness about her that was both captivating and intimidating. Her height alone made her stand out. She was several inches taller than Nathan, with a presence that seemed to command the room. He froze. His mind raced, trying to process what he was seeing. Was she human? No, her features were too sharp, too otherworldly. Her face, though soft, held an air of royalty. Nathan swallowed, unsure of what to do. He didn't want to provoke anything, but he couldn't just stand there. "Excuse me," he said, his voice tentative. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm lost." The woman turned slowly, and for the first time, Nathan saw her face fully. She had eyes the color of a deep, endless ocean, and though her expression remained calm, there was a sense of power in her gaze that unsettled him. She was stunning, impossibly so. Her face was flawless, her features both elegant and strong. Nathan's breath caught in his throat. "You speak our tongue?" she asked, her voice melodious but firm, with a slight accent that Nathan couldn't place. Yes. I mean, I do now." He cleared his throat, feeling foolish for his stammering. "I'm Captain Nathan Hayes. I was part of a mission. My ship crashed and I ended up here. I'm looking for help." She studied him carefully, her eyes narrowing as though she were measuring him. "A human I should have known." Her tone was almost disappointed. "What brings you to my kingdom? I didn't mean to come here. My ship was damaged and I crash-landed. This planet wasn't on any map, and I had no way of knowing where I was going." Nathan felt the need to explain himself, unsure why. Something about her presence made him feel small, but also oddly safe. "Please, I just need to fix my ship. I mean no harm." She stepped closer, her movements fluid, graceful, almost like a dancer. Nathan felt his heart race. There was something regal about her, something ancient that demanded respect. She was no ordinary being. "Your people are far from here," she said, her voice softening slightly. "I know of Earth, your kind is young, reckless even, yet you have come to our world, and now you must face the consequences." "Consequences?" Nathan asked, confused. "I'm just trying to survive. Please, if you could just help me." "I cannot help you," she interrupted, her voice suddenly firm again. "Not unless you prove yourself worthy. This is no place for strangers, especially ones who stumble upon it by accident." Nathan felt a knot tighten in his chest. She was right. He was out of his depth here. He had no idea who this woman was, but one thing was clear. She was powerful. She was unlike anyone he had ever encountered. "I'll do whatever it takes. I'll prove myself. I just need help to get back home." The woman, who Nathan now realized must be some kind of queen, regarded him with silent judgment. Then, to his surprise, she nodded. "Very well, human. You will stay here in my care, but do not think you are safe yet. There are those who will seek to destroy you. You are nothing but an outsider to them." Nathan's mind raced, trying to figure out who she was and what this kingdom could be. He had to tread carefully. Still, he couldn't help but notice how her eyes softened for just a brief moment, just a fleeting look that made him wonder if she, too, was alone in some way. He looked at her again, his heart pounding in his chest. "You're so beautiful," he blurted out without thinking. I'm left speechless. To his shock, the queen's face flushed, a rare color for her species, as Nathan would later learn. Her cheeks tinted a deep, soft red, and she quickly turned her head away, a strange, vulnerable look flashing across her face. It was a fleeting moment, but Nathan couldn't help but be stunned. The alien queen, this powerful being who commanded such respect and fear, was embarrassed by his words. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Nathan was too stunned to say anything, and the queen was too composed to admit anything aloud. But in that brief silence, something shifted between them, something neither of them could yet understand. Before either of them could process the moment, an alarm suddenly blared throughout the temple. A distant sound echoed through the halls, followed by the sound of heavy footsteps approaching. Nathan's eyes widened in alarm. "What's happening?" "They've found us," the queen said, her expression hardening once more. "And now we fight." The sound of approaching footsteps grew louder, echoing through the vast temple. Nathan's heart raced. He didn't know what was happening or who was coming, but the urgency in the queen's voice told him it wasn't good. The queen, Alindra, turned to face him, her expression hardening, the soft blush from earlier quickly disappearing. "They've found us," Alindra said, her voice cold and authoritative. "I must prepare." Nathan didn't have time to ask more questions. He knew better than to waste time when danger was near. His instincts kicked in as he reached for the gun holstered at his side, but Alindra stopped him with a single, firm gesture. "No weapons, human," she said sharply. "You won't need them." She moved swiftly to the center of the room, her robes flowing gracefully around her. Nathan followed, unsure of what to expect. He had never seen a woman, let alone an alien queen, move with such purpose and strength. There was something about her that was both intimidating and mesmerizing, like she carried the weight of the world on her shoulders, yet moved with the ease of someone who had never known fear. As Alindra reached a large stone pedestal at the heart of the temple, the walls began to hum with energy. Lights flickered, casting strange shadows across the room. Nathan felt the temperature drop as if the very air was shifting, becoming charged with power. "Stay close," Alindra said, her voice lower now, almost gentle. "This is no place for a stranger, but I cannot allow them to take you." Nathan didn't question her, following her as she activated a glowing crystal embedded in the pedestal. The temple seemed to respond to her touch, the entire structure groaning as though it were alive. The hum grew louder, and the walls began to shift, revealing hidden doors and passageways. Before Nathan could react, a group of armored aliens appeared at the entrance. They were tall, their bodies covered in dark, metallic armor, their faces obscured by helmets that glowed with an eerie red light. They looked like soldiers, fierce and determined. "Step aside, Alindra," one of them commanded in a deep, gruff voice. "The human is ours now." Alindra's eyes flashed with fury, and Nathan could see the raw power she held in her gaze. But she didn't move. Instead, she raised a hand, and the temperature in the room dropped even further. The alien soldiers took a step back, as if they could feel the shift in the air. "You have no claim over him," Alindra said firmly, her voice cold and unwavering. "He is under my protection." The soldiers exchanged glances, unsure of how to respond. Nathan could feel the tension in the air, thick and heavy. He wasn't just caught in a battle for survival. He was in the middle of a power struggle between these alien factions. He had no idea what the stakes were or what Alindra's role was in this, but one thing was clear. She wasn't about to back down. The lead soldier stepped forward, his helmet glowing brighter. "You forget your place, Queen. The Council will hear of this. Your actions have consequences." Alindra's expression didn't change. "Let them come. They will learn nothing but their own failure." For a moment the room was silent. Nathan was amazed by the Queen's confidence. Here she was, facing down a group of heavily armed soldiers, and yet she stood taller than any of them. There was a calmness in her, a strength that made him feel safe, safe in a way he hadn't felt in a long time, even in the midst of danger. The soldiers hesitated, unsure of what to do. Finally, the lead one spoke again, his voice tinged with frustration. "We will return with more," he warned. "You will regret defying us, Alindra." With that, the soldiers turned and left, their footsteps fading into the distance. Alindra didn't move, her gaze fixed on the door as if daring them to return. Nathan, still trying to process what had just happened, let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "That was close," he said, his voice quiet. Alindra didn't respond immediately. Instead, she turned to face him, her expression softening for the first time since they'd met. Nathan noticed the faintest hint of exhaustion in her eyes, something that made her seem more human than he had expected. "You're safe, for now," she said, her voice quieter. "But this isn't over. Those soldiers are only the beginning." Nathan nodded, still not fully understanding what was going on but willing to trust her for the moment. She had protected him, and that meant something. But he knew he couldn't just stand by and let her fight alone. He had to do something. "I won't just hide," he said, his voice more determined now. "If they come back, I'll fight." Alindra looked at him, her eyes studying him carefully. For a moment, she seemed to consider his words. Then she nodded slightly. "I didn't expect you to," she said, her voice softer now. "You are not like the others I've encountered. You think with your heart, not your fear." Nathan wasn't sure how to respond. No one had ever said anything like that to him before, especially not someone as powerful as Alindra. He had always been seen as a soldier, a tool in a war. But she saw him as something more. She saw his humanity. "Why are you helping me?" Nathan asked, his voice more vulnerable now. "You don't even know me." Alindra's gaze softened. "I do not trust easily," she said quietly. "But I know what it is to be alone, to feel trapped in a world that doesn't understand you. I see it in your eyes. You are not just a soldier, Nathan Hayes, you are more." Nathan felt a lump form in his throat. He wasn't sure why, but her words made him feel both honored and afraid. She was right. He wasn't just a soldier. He had always wanted more than that. But in this alien world, what could he possibly offer? "You don't have to protect me," he said quietly, his voice almost a whisper. "But I won't let you do it alone." Alindra studied him for a moment, and for the first time, Nathan saw a flicker of something like hope in her eyes. It was brief, but it was there. "You don't understand," she said softly. "This isn't just about survival. It's about a kingdom on the brink of collapse. And whether you know it or not, you're now part of this struggle. You may be human, but you are not powerless." Nathan wasn't sure what she meant, but the weight of her words stayed with him. In that moment, he realized that he wasn't just caught in a war between alien factions. He was part of something much bigger, something that would change everything. He had no idea what the future held, but one thing was clear: he couldn't run away. Not anymore. He had to fight, for Alindra, for her people, for himself. The tension between them shifted. There was no longer just fear in the air. There was something else, something that felt like a bond forming between them. They weren't just allies in a war anymore, they were something more. And as the doors to the temple closed, sealing them inside, Nathan knew that whatever happened next, he wouldn't face it alone. The sound of the enemy's ships approaching rattled the very foundation of the temple. Nathan stood at the entrance, looking out across the alien landscape. The dark sky was filled with ominous clouds that seemed to press down on the world like a weight, and the air crackled with tension. He could feel it, the anticipation of an inevitable clash that was coming. He had fought in countless battles before, but this was different. This wasn't just about survival. This was about something bigger, something far more important. Behind him, Alindra moved with an air of quiet command. She was calm, but there was an intensity in her eyes that spoke of the years of responsibility she had carried as a queen. Nathan had come to respect her not just for her beauty and strength, but for her wisdom, her vulnerability, and the weight of the world that rested on her shoulders. She had protected him in ways he couldn't have imagined, but now they were both going to have to fight. Together. "They will come in full force," Alindra said, her voice low but resolute. "We cannot afford to let them reach the heart of my kingdom." Nathan nodded, his mind racing. He had learned a great deal about the alien factions that threatened this planet, but there was still so much he didn't understand. The soldiers they had faced before were just the tip of the iceberg. The real threat was coming, and this time it wouldn't be as easy to handle. There was no turning back. "I'm ready," he said simply. The words felt hollow in his mouth. Ready? How could he be ready for something like this? But there was no choice. He had to stand by her. She had stood by him when he needed it most. Now it was his turn. Alindra didn't speak. Instead, she reached into the folds of her robes and pulled out a small, glowing orb. It pulsed with energy, casting a soft, eerie light over her face. She held it out to Nathan. "This is a gift from my people," she said. "It is a symbol of trust, of unity. Use it when the time comes. It will help you find your strength." Nathan took the orb, feeling its warmth as it hummed in his hand. It felt alive somehow, like it had a pulse, a heartbeat of its own. He didn't fully understand what it was or how it would help, but he knew it was important, for her people. The ground shook beneath them and a distant roar filled the air. The enemy was close. It was time. Alindra turned, her expression hardening once more. "Stay close. Do not stray from me." Nathan fell into step beside her as they made their way deeper into the temple. The walls seemed to close in around them, the hum of the crystals growing louder, more intense. They moved with purpose, each step carrying them closer to the heart of the temple where the final battle would unfold. As they entered the main hall, Alindra raised her hand, and the massive doors slowly creaked open, revealing the vast courtyard outside. Nathan could see the enemy ships descending from the sky, their sleek, dark forms cutting through the air like vultures circling their prey. The ground trembled beneath him as the first wave of enemy soldiers began to land. "We are not alone," Alindra said quietly, turning to face Nathan. "The people of my kingdom will fight with us, but they will need your help." Nathan glanced around, unsure of what to expect. He had never seen this world's people before, but he could feel the energy in the air. There was something fierce about them, something powerful. They were not afraid. As if on cue, a group of armored soldiers emerged from the shadows, their eyes locked on Alindra. They were tall, imposing, their armor shimmering in the dim light. But their faces softened when they saw her, and they dropped to one knee in unison. "Your Majesty," one of them said, his voice deep and reverent. "We are ready," Alindra nodded. "Rise, my warriors, we fight together." The soldiers stood, their expressions hardening once more. Nathan watched as they moved into position, their movements synchronized and fluid. They were not just soldiers, they were a family bound by loyalty and honor. And now they were united by a common cause, to protect their queen, to protect their home. The first wave of enemy soldiers stormed into the courtyard, their weapons raised and ready. They were fierce, their eyes filled with hatred. But Alindra stood tall, her presence alone enough to make them hesitate. Nathan could feel the tension in the air, the weight of what was about to happen. This was no longer just a fight for survival. This was a fight for the future. Without warning, the first shot was fired. It echoed through the courtyard, the sound of the explosion reverberating off the walls. Nathan didn't think. He moved without hesitation, his instincts kicking in as he dove behind a nearby pillar for cover. Alindra was already ahead of him, her hands raised, and the air around her seemed to crackle with energy. She wasn't just a queen, she was a warrior. Nathan took a deep breath, his heart racing. He had to stay focused. He had to be the protector, not just the soldier. He wasn't sure how he was supposed to do that, but in this moment, he knew he couldn't afford to fail. Not now. Not when everything was at stake. He peeked around the pillar, his eyes scanning the battlefield. The enemy was moving quickly, flanking Alindra's soldiers. He could see the fear in their eyes, the uncertainty. But Alindra stood tall, her energy radiating outward. She was a force to be reckoned with, and as long as she stood, her people had hope. Nathan grabbed his weapon and rushed forward, firing at the enemy soldiers who were closing in. He didn't hesitate. He didn't think. He just fought. For the next several hours, the battle raged on, each side fighting tooth and nail for control. Nathan could feel the weight of the fight pressing down on him, but he couldn't stop. He couldn't give up. Alindra's people fought alongside him, their strength and determination contagious. Together, they held their ground against the enemy's relentless onslaught. But as the battle wore on, Nathan began to notice something. The enemy soldiers were not just fighting to defeat them, they were trying to break them. Every move they made was calculated to push them to their limits, to weaken their resolve. And it was working. Nathan could feel the exhaustion setting in, his muscles aching with every movement. Alindra, however, was unyielding. Her strength never wavered. She was everywhere, guiding her people, leading them, fighting with them. It was as though the battle had become a part of her, a part of who she was. As the sun began to set, casting an eerie glow across the battlefield, the enemy launched one final, desperate assault. Nathan and Alindra fought side by side, their movements synchronized as if they had fought together their whole lives. The air around them seemed to shimmer with power, the energy from their combined efforts creating a shield that held back the enemy's forces. But even Alindra's strength had its limits. The final wave came in full force, overwhelming their defenses. Alindra was struck, a sharp blow to her side that sent her crashing to the ground. Nathan's heart stopped. He rushed to her side, his hands shaking as he tried to help her up. "Alindra!" he shouted, his voice breaking. She looked up at him, her eyes filled with pain, but also with something else, something like gratitude. She raised her hand weakly, touching his cheek. "You are not alone, Nathan," she whispered. "You have done more than I ever could have asked." Nathan's heart clenched. He couldn't lose her, not now, not after everything they had been through. He reached for the glowing orb she had given him earlier, its warmth pulsing in his hand. He had no idea how it worked, but in that moment it didn't matter. He had to try. He held it up, the energy from the orb flowing outward, mixing with the strength of his will. The orb hummed with power, the air crackling around them as the energy surged through him, into Alindra. And then, in a flash of light, the battle stopped. The enemy soldiers froze, their weapons lowered as they were overwhelmed by the sheer force of the energy. Nathan could feel the power surging through him, more than he had ever imagined possible. He didn't understand it, but he didn't need to. He only knew one thing: they had won. As the battlefield fell silent, Nathan turned to Alindra. She was breathing heavily but alive, her face pale but filled with a sense of peace. "You did it," she whispered, her voice filled with awe. Nathan nodded, his chest rising and falling with each breath. He had done it. Together they had done it. The war was over. But their story was just beginning.